separation from nature that our own schedules are causing, let alone the way in which we touch nature. And so if we look to nature, there's always a pause, morning and evening. There's silence. There's an opportunity for reflection. Start your day with gratitude and write it down, or just get in the process of noting your gratitudes, and then look to your water and food as your most grateful interaction with Mother Nature, who's there to nurture your body into your intrinsic health there.
Yeah, I'm hearing that you're calling for the simplicity of, and also giving us an opportunity. If we live in an apartment, just get a plant, get that mint plant, grow it, touch it, wash it, go to the farmer's market, grow it in our backyard. So I know that our listeners are really appreciating ways that we can take action. I'm really curious about probiotics. For so long, that was just like, take your probiotics, that will help. What's the effect of probiotics now on the microbiome?
Yeah, this is just one of those classic examples of, the allopathic doctor getting kicked off the stool by the more natural-minded, seemingly functional medicine doctor or whatever it is, and here comes this tool called a probiotic, which is 3 or 5 species of bacteria at billions of copies, so 35 billion copies or 50 billion copies. There's some on the market that brag on being 1 trillion copies of the same bacteria. And so you've got this, blunt tool that's been put into play with almost no scientific data that this is actually helpful, especially in the long run. But so I've been preaching against the widespread use of probiotics for over 6 years now, and the smoking gun on this thing really got published in our very respected journal called Cell. It's one of the highest revered peer-reviewed science journals in the world, and Cell in September of 2018 published an extraordinary study that was across species of rodents into humans and demonstrated the devastating effects of probiotics at the very point which I thought was the most important time to give probiotics, which was right after an antibiotic. And so that's I'm out there preaching against probiotics as a daily supplement in people's lives, but I kept saying, well, if you just had an antibiotic, then I can see taking 2 weeks of a probiotic or something like that to kind of get things back on track. But of course, with this publication of Cell, I find out that, wow, I was exactly wrong again. Like, that's kind of the trend in science these days, that we keep finding out every time we try to either go against or micromanage nature, we screw it up. And so what is a probiotic? It's this tiny little monoculture within this massive ecosystem that I started the half hour describing there. And so this tiny little monoculture of a few species comes in and colonizes the gut. And this is a frightening part of the Cell journal article, is that we've been told probiotics never actually set up shop in the mucosa or the lining of the gut. That we were always told they pass through benignly, which was good because none of them are derived from human gut. They're all derived from cow intestines. And it turns out that cows have a much different GI tract than humans, and so the last thing you really want as a human is a ruminant, cow bacteria growing in your gut. Well, we were told, well, these aren't really human species. They just kind of pass through, and they're kind of benign species, and they're supposed to shift the inflammatory cascade. And we've been told all kinds of different stories by this industry, and then find out that indeed it does colonize the gut, especially after antibiotics. And so showed both in humans and rodents that as soon as you start taking that probiotic, the wipeout of the gut diversity that you achieved with the antibiotic is frozen in time by the probiotic. And so the antibiotic leads to about an 80% drop in biodiversity. If you start a probiotic, you freeze the recovery. If you do no probiotic, within 30 days, both in human and rodent models, totally back to normal baseline. So 30-day recovery with no probiotic. With a probiotic, still hasn't recovered in 6 months. And so we are really stopping the recovery of a multi-species, biodiversity by overwhelming the gut with these few species at multiple billions of copies a day. And so the reality is now, since September, I've had to completely discontinue probiotics in my clinic altogether. There's really no rationale in my mind to using a probiotic at this point. If you or your patients have some sort of experience where you're like, no, I definitely benefit from this probiotic when I started it, then think through. Well, actually, you can see a little bump, and you can actually see a little bump in those first few minutes of a probiotic. You saw that. You can see that in the journal article out of Cell. in the first 3 days there was a little bump in recovery, and then it immediately went back and suppressed it. And so if you felt better for a few days, it's erroneous to think that you're still feeling better than you would without that probiotic. So phase off your probiotics. If for some reason, which would be completely unexpected at this point with all the science we have, you felt worse off your probiotic, then I would say don't take it more than once a week. You got to back off and let the biodiversity of Mother Nature take back over and stop trying to micromanage it with that probiotic.
Yeah, so I'm hearing listening to nature, watching nature, and also listening to our bodies and really taking the cue from there. And thank you for sharing that, your own learning and experience. I wish we had a lot of time, more time with you today, but we have just about 5 more minutes, and I really want to hear more of what we can do immediately to help ourselves on a daily basis. And also anything collectively that you think we need to be have our eyes and minds on at this time too.
Fantastic. Yeah, so the call to action is really around supporting our farm industry at this point. The only way we're really going to turn the tide on, something like this autism epidemic that we're facing, where we've gone from 1 in 15,000 children with autism to 1 in 32 children with autism, and we're heading for 1 in 3 children with autism by 2035. And so, the way we're going to stem this tide of disease in our children is going to be change the food chain. And so, all of you are listening are very, aware. I think that every year it becomes more difficult to eat healthy. It turns out that organic food, for example, is very much contaminated with Roundup being the primary chemical used worldwide now. With 5 billion pounds of this chemical being used worldwide, it's water soluble. It gets into our air we breathe, into the rainfall. 75% of our rainfall in the U.S. ag environment is contaminated with Roundup. 75% of the air breathed contaminated with Roundup. And this functions as an antibiotic in the environment. It kills the microbiome, which then damages all biology around it, including the humans living within it. It drives cancer, drives all kinds of different stuff. And so ultimately, I can tell you as a consumer, eat healthy, drink healthy, do all this stuff. But the reality is, if we don't all get together immediately and support the farmers who are chemical farming right now and give them the resources needed to make this transition within the next 5 years, we're going to lose it all. We're going to lose the oceans. We're going to lose, the web of life. And so the call to action is support the farmers. And so the nonprofit is farmersfootprint.us is the website, farmersfootprint.us. And the call to action is coming on in time for the holidays here. By mid-December, you'll be able to donate $100 to sponsor an acre of farmland a year to transition that from a chemical farming environment to a regenerative agriculture, far beyond organic. We're going to a no-till organic regenerative agricultural practice that we're teaching these farmers. So a very exciting group of nonprofits have joined us in this, everything from the Rodale Institute, which is the godfather of organic farming, all the way to Kiss the Ground. Fantastic group out of California that's really reaching young people with this message. So we've partnered with, we've got 6 different global nonprofits now partnering with us, with another dozen or so heading our way. So we're really looking at bonding together all of the good ideas on the earth on how we're going to recover the soils and the nutrients within our food. So that's a big push for us. If you want more education around the general stuff that our laboratories do, I have my own basic science laboratories. We do a ton of work in this area of Roundup and glyphosate, herbicides, and human health. We've published in peer-reviewed science and all that. The website, zachbushmd.com, can get you more of that, as well as the science page at the word restore, 4life.com. It's got all the publications there, the science behind herbicides and the human gut, and some of those potential alternatives to you than probiotics as you start to redefine your definition of gut health.
Dr. Zach, can you repeat the website for the nonprofit, the foundation you mentioned, Farmers for, go on with that one again,
Farmers
please.
Footprint, yep.
Farmers Footprint. Okay.
.us, yeah.
FARMERFOOTPRINT. Okay.
Farmers Footprint, yep. FOOT, print, footprint.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. In the last couple moments, can you speak about the impact? I'm really thinking this has some impact on our mental health as well. What are you seeing now?
Yes, absolutely. So this is a 4-hour lecture compacted into 10 seconds for you here. But what we've proven out, not just our laboratories, but UCSF, UCSD, a bunch of universities have shown that the bacteria that live in your gut are necessarily sitting on the enteric endocrine cells that line your gut that produce over 90% of your serotonin and 50% of your dopamine. Those cells, the enteric endocrine cells, have to be working in concert with these specific bacteria. If you take an antibiotic, your risk of major depression goes up by 24% in the next 12 months. The risk of generalized anxiety disorder up by 17%. If you take 2 courses of antibiotics in a year, your risk of major depression goes to 54% increase. Risk of anxiety attack, 42% increase. We are devastating the brain's ability to have any cohesive thought or processing of information by eliminating the very factory when you kill the microbiome. Then the herbicides, especially Roundup and glyphosate, destroys the enteric membrane to cause leaky gut and this huge gut permeability injury to the immune system, but in the process also disrupts those enteric endocrine cells manufacturing their serotonin and dopamine. So it is literally a nuclear bomb. The combination of Roundup in our food and water combined with an oral antibiotic for your UTI or your upper respiratory tract infection, disaster for the brain.
And I'm sure we don't want people just jumping off of the medication they're on, so any caution there that you might want to share with people as to what they can do if they're currently taking those medications and might want to do something different, have other options?
Yeah, if you're on an antibiotic right now, I would go back to your physician and really, if your physician doesn't have any ideas of what you would be on instead of an antibiotic, you need a new doctor. There are so many other options outside of, the classic antibiotic model to address overgrowth of bacteria. Certainly, if you've been diagnosed with Lyme or something like that, I would seek out a holistic Lyme center that's using non-antibiotic approach to managing your symptoms, because you don't want to kill the microbiome. You want to work with it. You want to welcome it in. Be grateful for it. If you have an infection, I've had flu maybe twice in the last decade, and both those times that I got flu and was really out with a fever were some of the most important spiritual transformation moments I've had in the last decade. So I think there's spiritual reasons beyond the physical reasons that a virus shows up in your life. And so be open to the possibility of constant gratitude to Mother Nature and all of that, and look for the physicians and practitioners that are going to support you in that new viewpoint that you may be adopting now, of that there's always health to be seen, there's always balance to be achieved, and you need a team around you. I'm a huge fan of traditional Chinese medicine. I'm a huge fan of homeopathy. I'm a huge fan of the real classical approaches of Ayurveda. So look far beyond the allopathic model, and if you're stuck there with your team, expand your team. You do want a team around you. Not a single one of us is allowed to heal on our own. It's just one of those interesting things that I think we are really called into community to be able to heal. And so that's most important for physicians perhaps out there. We think we can take care of ourselves when in reality we need to surrender that healing process to a community around us. So build that team around you, and I think you're going to find phenomenal health in your life.
Oh, Dr. Zach Bush, thank you so much for all the wonderful insights, the practical steps that we can take from getting a plant, getting our hands in the dirt, supporting our farmers, and also really how to look further to taking care of our health.